You are live. Hi, welcome to the Mindset. This is Christopher Feltner, trained performance architect for Ukeru Systems. And with me I have
Kim Sanders, the president of Ukeru and executive vice president at Grafton.
So we're changing things up for you a little bit this time. We're not in our usual office space doing this. You know, I'm here in the mountains of Utah with my translucent arm. Actually, that's my background because hopefully in 2 weeks I will literally be training in Utah. And I hope the weather feels like this photo looks. That's that's my goal.
Yeah, that's some inspiration for sure.
Yeah. So right before we started recording this, me and Kim were just talking about weather. So right now it is very cold and very windy, and they're calling for, by Virginia standards, a good amount of snow, or what New York calls, eh.
Yeah,
So we'll see what the weekend brings, but it doesn't affect Podcast Friday. So here we go.
that's right. Got to go through with that.
That's right. So the last episode was technically the first podcast presented for 2021, but today is the first one actually recorded in 2021. So kind of looking back at the past year, Kim, to start off with, you know, there's obviously a lot of problems, concerns, challenges that have come up over the past year in pretty much most aspects of life. At least here in America, we can speak for that. But at the same token, there have been some good things that happen and opportunities over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like all of the bad is well documented. So for you, what have been some positive things that came out of last year?
Well, I mean, I really think that just in general, not just for Ukeru, but just positives for our world, I guess, is I think this use of technology. I feel like we've had video conferencing for quite some time, but a lot of people, were leery of it or didn't like it, would rather be in person, which I personally still feel that way. I'd rather be in person. But man, look how comfortable we have gotten because we haven't had a choice.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just nothing to jump on a Zoom or to, even do this like this,
Right.
where so many times before we were so hesitant.
Hmm.
And, I guess just changes, whatever you're changing, change is hard.
Right.
So
Well, I think in terms of the podcast, I think we were just lazy. You know,
maybe.
like we talked about forever. Oh, it'd be cool if we did a podcast. And then COVID said, hey, you can't travel. Then we're like, all right, well, let's do podcast. So,
Right. Yeah. It's interesting because, I guess when I really think about it, there's a lot of things. I think it's also pushed people together in a sense, like maybe not physically together, but emotionally together. We've seen our families have struggles, but we've also seen our coworkers who are so often like family to
right.
us. And and so I feel like, every day we're reaching out to each other and trying to make sure everybody's okay and if people need anything. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I think we can speak personally that COVID is a real thing.
Oh,
'Cause, I
absolutely.
mean, just in our team, we had two two different ones of our trainers who had COVID, and some of their loved ones, and other coworkers, and other places we've trained that also dealt with this. So this
Yeah.
is
And
not a
actually to know so many people who have had family members die.
yep,
Like,
absolutely.
you know, you normally have that here and there, but man, there's been so many. So,
And also, I would say if you're watching or listening and you're contemplating whether or not you want to get the vaccine. Yesterday, I had my second dose of the Moderna vaccine. For me, I pretty much had the exact same reaction I do whenever I get a flu shot. The upper arm, my upper left arm, had some achiness, a little bit of soreness, and then it goes away after a couple days. So
Yeah.
so far that's been the same story with the second dose.
Yeah. And I had my second one, 5 hours ago now. So far, so good. Didn't hurt at all getting it. And so I'm hoping this time tomorrow I'll be feeling the same way.
So as long as you don't suddenly drop head first onto the desk,
Just whoop,
it'll be a
out,
success.
out.
We'll
Yeah.
have to cut that part. So,
Yeah.
be like,
So,
"That's a-"
it's so interesting when you think about this. I was talking with someone yesterday and they said, 5 years from now, how are we going to be talking about this?
Well, I
You
think
know?
that kind of goes back to maybe our first podcast episode we had. We talked about COVID and everything.
Mhm.
Is this like the flu, or is this like measles? Right?
Yeah.
Is it going to be where every year we have to come up with a variant of this vaccine, or is it this will take care of it? You know?
Right. Right. I hope that we don't see worse and worse variants. I know
Yeah.
that's a fear, but
Well, they
I
do.
mean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, they are talking about a lot of different variants out there, but the main thing seems to be, it's easier to spread and things of that nature. So,
Right. Right. But will we look back on this time as though we have survived something massive? Like people 100 years ago or whatever talked about surviving a plague, or the generation that went through World War II, or will it be like, are we going to be telling like generations of people about this? And when we're like, what, 90, 95, are we going to be talking about this and the hardships that were produced around it? But then, like you just noted, there have been positives. There have been. It's just hard to see that when so many people are dying.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I could speak strictly from a work standpoint. We were able to work a lot on some outreach as well as doing, updating the new materials.
Mhm.
Uh, it forced us to look at how we do recertification during this time, and also taught us that we were right and that we should do it in person
Right, for
for the
sure.
most part. I
Yeah.
personally got to do some writing and recording of music, which I definitely wouldn't be able to do with the travel schedule we usually keep up. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's along with other challenges of being here and being able to help deal with those and navigate those versus from the road. So,
Right. Absolutely.
but I think
Yeah.
when I think about, all the things and how I feel like last year was very commercialized as the worst year ever.
Hmm.
Like 2020 was a demon, right? But really, I feel like what makes it that or doesn't make it that is, did we learn anything from it, right?
Right.
Did we learn anything so that we don't repeat the same mistakes this year and moving forward? So it'll be
Hmm.
interesting. It'll be interesting
Yeah,
to see.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So what we have scheduled to talk about today is power dynamics.
Mm.
Power dynamics in our field in particular and how it relates to, I mean, really anywhere.
Mhm.
So if you were out on the street, so if you were maybe I should rephrase this.
Yeah, I was gonna
Let's
say, am I on like the walkway? Am I on the
right,
corner? Like,
right,
I don't know where this is going.
right. Let's just say you were out in public. How about that? I think
Okay.
that's a better way to frame it. You're out in public and someone comes up to you and starts talking about power dynamics in our field. Like what types of things come to mind when this topic comes up?
Well, I think it's different for each person. So
Hmm.
for me, immediately the first thoughts in my head are generally negative. You know, I immediately think power of like over someone
Hmm.
or over something,
Right.
or someone trying to make me do something that I don't agree with or I don't want to do. But maybe because of their physical makeup, or maybe because of their position, um, level of authority, they can make me do something that I don't want to do. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Hmm. So, what would be another way of looking at that? Because I think you're
Well,
right. I think that people, when you talk about power dynamics, people automatically start thinking about power struggles, right?
oh, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, if I say, okay, put those like negative kinds of thoughts aside, I think I personally also then think of like because sometimes I think you need. I want to say this. Sometimes I don't think power is a bad thing. I think sometimes you need to be a little bit more powerful. But when I say powerful, it makes me think more like how can you use your skills, your talents, um, your thinking to maybe influence
Hmm.
someone or persuade someone,
Hmm.
but it framed in a totally different way, like actually very positive, very inspiring. Because I do think actually, if you go towards the positive type of power,
Hmm.
it's actually more powerful than the negative, because you don't get all the side effects of bitterness and hatred and you know guilt for being powerful, or I don't know. I think it could get really deep.
So maybe it's more in how it's used, right?
Yeah, how it's used, how it's presented. I think so.
Because because if you think about like what makes someone powerful, and I think that really depends on the context, right? Or is it physical power? You know, they're really strong. Is it uh, mental fortitude? Is it having a special ability that allows them to do things? And it also goes into, you know, an authoritative role, right?
Mhm.
And I think that that is probably one of the bigger things that people run into when they think of power dynamics in our setting is where it leads to power struggles. I'm trying to exert power over you because it's in my best interest, not necessarily in yours or in ours together, right?
Right.
Because I mean, we've all heard the adage, "No one wins a power struggle,"
Hmm.
right? And while I agree with that, I also think that it could agreements on that could change depending on whose perspective, right? So, for example, if you're someone I'm serving at a facility and I give you directions to do something and you refuse, and then I overpower you with volume, size, tone, or threats of what you won't get or what I'll take away if you don't do this, and then you comply, some folks mistake compliance as power. But what have you lost by gaining that compliance? I think
Hmm.
that's something that people we all could really use a mindful reminder of from time to time.
Oh, I think so.
You know,
I think so. Because
at what
what I mean,
cost, right?
right. So for you in your head, in that situation you just gave, what
Mhm.
do you feel would be lost?
Well, the relationship, right?
Absolutely.
That's one.
That's
You know,
absolutely.
then I'm only seen as the punisher, and plus, you don't trust the punisher, right? You don't rely. You're probably not going to be truthful to the punisher because you don't want to be punished, right? But also, I think you don't teach anything different,
Right.
right? There's no real learning that comes out of it. It's just an emotional response or resentment that comes.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. But what's even crazier, think about this. So if we're in that dynamic, you and I, and you're the staff, and let's say I'm a kid,
Hmm.
not only have we lost our relationship with each other, but if the way you've treated me in that overpowering type of way,
Hmm.
you may make it so every man I come in contact with for years, you represent all men. I mean, it's like you're not only just damaging this relationship, it's almost like you're closing the window on great relationships that even could come after. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't sort of prove their trust. And
Hmm.
you know, I personally think you can always help a bad relationship or even the perception of a bad relationship. But yeah, it's so big, the damage that can be done.
Well, and I know this is something we frequently talk with folks about in training, but it's not just how, let's say, a staff interacts with an individual that's served. It's also how staff interact with each other, right?
Absolutely.
Whether it's me and a peer, whether it's a supervisor with those they supervise, all the way up to administration, overhead leadership. Power dynamics play a huge role in all that, and power struggles occur in all
Hmm.
levels like that.
Hmm.
So, for you, this is a good question for you. So, you have been a residential staff, DSP.
Hmm.
You have been an executive director of a region, and also being president and an EVP. What have been some lessons of your experience, particularly in staff power dynamics, that you've learned over the years?
A lot. We don't have enough time. You know, I think it all starts with, like, my grandmother used to always say, number one, don't get too big for your britches.
Hmm.
Meaning you really do have to worry about how you're seen by others, because when you start putting, you start thinking you're something special and hot stuff and people need to listen to me because of my position, you just start losing people. So don't ever forget, like, where you came from. Don't don't forget the struggles that you've experienced at various levels, especially when you're talking about your career. But there's also this thing with, she used to always say, she still says, you get more bees with honey,
Right.
right? And I do. I think that that's a super simple way of saying, be kind to people.
Hmm.
Like, if you need a workforce of 300 people to do something, then genuinely care about them and help them do it. Like, encourage them. And because you could force somebody to do something. Of course, you could threaten them, like, do this or you lose your job. They're not going to hang around long, because, again, of that resentment. No one likes to be pushed or told what to do,
Hmm.
especially if it's in a not so great way.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, I've learned a lot of things, but those are like just basic things. Like, if you got to take care of people.
Hmm. Something I like that you have frequently said when we've trained or done presentations out is that you can't expect staff to treat those you serve with kindness, compassion, patience if they're being beat with a stick.
Yeah, Jim Gaynor said that to me often when we first started this whole thing with comfort versus control, because you know we sort of introduced this idea of Ukeru basically to keep our staff safe. Like,
Hmm.
we were trying to figure, and then we had this sort of like idea and a foundation that came from various people talking about stuff. And again, I think right in the beginning it was focused on how staff should treat the kids.
Right.
And it was very quick that we were like, wait a minute, we got to take a step back, you know. And again, I don't know, just the whole idea of power. I think when people are walking around like their position, demands respect from people. And again, they're doing that for themselves.
Right.
That's an ego thing.
Hmm.
They're making themselves feel good while they're making everybody else around them feel miserable.
I was thinking about how we teach a lot about labeling language. Staying away from things like, oh, Kim's manipulative, or she's so attention seeking, and those types of things. And something occurred to me the other night. I wanted to bring up, see what your thoughts were. I think that sometimes we run into some labeling language in kind of a little more of an abstract way that informs mindsets we don't even think about it. Like particularly what came to mind is when things are said like, "Oh, we got to be in the numbers." How many, who's going to be in the numbers tonight, or how long until this person's put into the numbers?
Mhm.
And
That's a
really,
great point.
when you think about that, it's basically it's almost like a disposable term.
Right. Because now you're a number. It's like you're not a
Right.
person, you're a number. Right. It's the same thing when we say, um, got to work the line,
Hmm.
right? You're going to actually work the line. What's the line mean?
Hmm.
Like, that makes it, to me, that gives that feel of like manufacturing and we don't really care about you. Just stand there
Hmm.
and, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's a great point.
Well, I think it's when you get folks that are taking a traditional business terminology and frame of mind, how you run like a regular business, and then try to apply it to a mental health care field, right?
Mhm.
Because those we those we serve, they're not products, right? So why would we try to use that same terminology, that same type of mindset? Um, so how do we get providers away from that type of mindset, from that traditional business?
Well, number one, I think, is talking about it, just like we're talking about it. Because just because we have a thought that makes really good sense, a group of people get together, oh my gosh, that makes great sense. It took us a while to get that thought. Like what you just said about the numbers, I can promise you, again, in my 32 years here, I've never thought of it that way. But that's the way I think. But I've never actually get thought of like that example. And that is a great example. So, I mean, to me, when we have that kind of thought process happening, we got to share it with people.
Right.
So, like as we go across the continent working with people, that would be a perfect example to use for people.
Hmm.
Then I think you got to just try to get people in leadership to model it, to practice it, to, you know, make it everyday thinking.
So how do we promote? Like, how can you promote if someone is watching this from whatever facility organization they work for? What steps could they do to get away from that traditional business mindset?
Well, again, I always go back. I mean, I always go back to talking.
Hmm.
Again, if it's with a leadership team to start, with focus groups to start, to just talk, to ask. I mean, and to flat out ask people, like, what kind of language makes you bitter? Like, how are you referred to that you wish you weren't? To to truly to truly start having those discussions and then make an honest effort to make it better.
Right. So if I'm someone from a leadership from another organization watching, And I have the question of how do I make those our employees feel valued, that they're not just numbers? Like what would be some first steps?
Well, include people. To me, that's one of the, okay, that's one of the first things is, so often when you talk to people and why they don't feel valued, it's not because they want more money. It's not because the benefits aren't good. It's because they feel like they're out of the loop. They're not given an opportunity to voice their opinions, give their ideas. They're not asked for their opinion. And so I don't know. To me, it's sort of that easy. It's making decisions as teams. And again, don't get me wrong. I know there always has to be a person ultimately,
Sure.
that's going to say, okay, this is the path we're going to take. But I think you can get a lot of input from people. And I think that goes a long way in making people feel valued.
Right.
And I think it's also like, if back to this whole idea of the power, I think it's being humble enough to be like, no matter if you have a group of staff of 20 or of 2,000, being humble enough to immerse yourself with them. Even if it's, just like, Sam Walton of Walmart, the whole management by walking around.
Hmm.
Like, get out of your office, go be with people, go talk to people, even if it's just to say hello. Like
Right.
if it's snowing outside, thank you so much for coming in. Be careful when you go home. Or, how's your son doing?
Yeah.
Just, is there anything I can do? Like, just be humble enough to want to genuinely be kind to people.
So then let's segue into an individual who's being served. How can we as a provider, as DSPs, make our individuals that we serve feel like they're not just another number?
With most things, Christopher, and we've talked about this a lot, and I think we've tried to ingrain a lot of this in everything we do, like in the Ukeru curriculum. But if you and I are sitting here and saying, in order to feel valued, I need people to be honest with me, to ask my opinion, to involve me. Why in the world do we think that the people that we're serving want anything different?
Right.
They want the same things we want. They want the same things. Involve them. Like, if you don't have a student government, get a student government going. Do focus groups with them. Ask them what they want. Ask them, especially with kids or someone who's in a facility,
Hmm.
be it a school or a behavioral health care facility. I mean, my goodness, ask their opinion about the food, about the color, about the furnishings, about how their bedroom is, and how they would wish their bedroom was. It's simple stuff.
Right.
Simple stuff.
I think a couple challenges. One is if I'm an individual that comes to a place and I've already been at 4, 5 or more other placements before I come here. I think that sometimes it's kind of like we talk about learning and with neural pathways, right?
Hmm.
If this keeps happening over and over again, then the story keeps being true that, no one wants me, no one cares about me. I'm just being hustled through the system. This place could be no different. They'll keep me for a little while, then they'll get tired of me. They'll send me on just like everybody else,
Hmm.
right? But then also, I think something that comes up, and we've talked about this in bits and pieces over the course of these podcasts, is your mindset becomes your approach. You talked about the things that we could do to make those we serve feel more welcome or appreciated, like they're not a number. But I think sometimes folks can get in a rut from a staff perspective of they don't they don't deserve that kind of power.
Hmm.
They're here because of this behavior or whatever it may be. They don't deserve that. And they try to run it more like a corrections type of setting
Hmm.
where this place is all about the power dynamic of as any kind of staff we have it, if you're here, you know, placed, you're never going to get it here. Right.
Right.
But this kind of goes back to what we said in the beginning. What is lost through forcing compliance? The relationship, the learning, the growth.
Hmm.
And that is definitely a big hindrance to treatment,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, because we often talk about how kids that even come to Grafton so often, not all the time, some kids have truly like super loving families and, um, because of their mental health diagnosis and other
Hmm.
conditions, they have some challenges. But so often it is this pattern of treatment that they have faced
Hmm.
over and over and over. And again, we have to prove that we are going to be different, that we want to be different.
Right.
But that's got to come with a lot of genuineness and a ton of discussion and involvement and interaction. It doesn't happen magically, that's for sure.
Hmm. So switching gears just a little bit, something you said in the beginning, a big learning coming out of the past year is how to use, as well as how to use more effectively, efficiently technology. So I think in our settings right now, like a lot of states, there's COVID restrictions for
Hmm.
schooling and even for, private day schools as well, and how technology is playing a role in that. What do you think will be the long-term effects from this? Do you think that will change even our type of settings, how education looks?
I mean, it may. I mean, when I think of some of our settings, I think one thing that's gotten more comfortable is, talking to families
Hmm.
through Zoom or whatever format. Also, like telehealth. I mean, I think, again, not just our settings, but this country. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever go totally then away back from that. I
Hmm.
think that's worked. I mean, a lot of people have seen everything from mental health counseling done through telehealth to, my goodness, I have a sore throat. Let me get on an app and talk to a doctor.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I think that definitely will be here to stay. But yeah, education, oh my goodness, that's been like a major change. So sometimes I think, I mean, I know people love that like university experience, but so many people now are getting their degrees online
Hmm.
without ever having to leave their living room. But yeah.
Yeah, I was having a discussion with my wife recently. We both graduated from JMU, and since we had left, it's become more and more popular, and they built on this huge addition to the football stadium because finally the football team stopped being horrible. They even built like this huge like on-site hotel with its own parking decks and all these things. And now suddenly, now what do they do?
Right.
Right. So I really wonder, how long can universities, of course, I think this will depend on the type of university, of course,
Hmm.
but will we see uh, many shut down or will any shut down as a result of all this?
I would think you're going to see smaller ones
Hmm.
that aren't going to keep sustaining.
And I even think about, you know, you can get a degree in so many different things depending on the university.
Absolutely.
Will that reduce?
Hmm.
Right? Will that reduce? You think about certification for teachers and folks who work in our field? How will that change?
Right.
You know, so yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Absolutely.
So now's the time to come up with some really good technology.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, again, so much is already being done with technology.
Hmm.
I don't know what else we need. I mean, of course, they're always going to be better and better, but yeah, it seems pretty smooth right now.
So one last thing with the power dynamics, just to put a good punctuation at the end of that topic. If I am a DSP, how do I know if I am using power the right way?
Hmm.
So if you do supervise me, but if I was a DSP and you were my supervisor and I came up to you and I said, I want to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, by the folks that I'm serving, how do I know if I'm using my power correctly or not?
Yeah. You know what? I don't think that there is one specific indicator. I think you got to look at a lot of things,
Hmm.
right? Because some people would say, is it working?
Right.
Like, if you're powerful and it's working, like that unit is nice and calm, you don't have significant incidents, way to go, Christopher.
Hmm.
But that might be the case, but you might have kids cowering and scared, and you may have just sort of squashed their voice. To me,
Right.
that's not working. So
Right.
I think you have to look at a lot of things. You have to look, and when I say look at things, I think as a supervisor, you have to see it,
Hmm.
right? You got to be in there and you got to watch it and see it and get a feel. Like, is this only working because Christopher is intimidating the kids?
Hmm.
Because if that's the case, we know that's not sustainable.
Right.
When you're not around, the shifts you don't work, they're going to go right back to whatever was like before.
Well,
So
eventually you're going to end up with someone in your care who isn't intimidated by you.
right.
I went through this and this many placements, or I went through this by my own family before I got here. Oh, you think that's going to make me listen? That
Mhm.
type of thing.
Yeah. So I think you got to see it. I think you got to listen for it. And I think you got to sort of take the temperature every once in a while and pay attention to the red flags. So like, is the relationship great with you and the kids?
Hmm.
When you're not around, do the kids still talk highly of you? And like, they can't wait for Christopher to come in on Tuesday, or like that kind of. To me, those are the kind of things that you're looking for. Like,
Hmm.
when they're upset, do they actually want to talk to you because you're the one that helps calm them down? I
Hmm.
mean, again, I think for each kid, there's probably something different to be looking at.
Right.
Like, is the little shy kid that maybe has been so traumatized over the course of their life, when you're around, that's when they finally start speaking out and speaking up
Hmm.
and advocating for themselves. For some people, they may say that, like, that's their challenge,
Yeah.
that they're too demanding or whatever. But depending on the kid, man, that might be exactly what you want to see because they feel so comfortable.
So I'm very aware of at all times with folks that I supervise is, do they feel like I include them as a team versus just being a you do this, okay, you do that type of
Hmm.
deal, to the point where when I have meetings with my folks, I actually ask them,
Right.
you know, is there anything you need from me that I'm not doing? Anything that you need support for that you don't feel like I've put as much attention towards? Because I want to make sure that I'm also treating those who I supervise in a way that is right.
Right.
You know, and I can say also, I feel the same way of how you treat with me, like, but I think another thing with folks who supervise others in our field is also looking at, am I willing to be vulnerable in the right way?
Mhm.
And I
Right. Do
think,
you have to always be right?
right.
Like,
And that goes into the ego aspect. Because like for me, for folks, our trainers in Ukeru, they're sometimes they'll come straight to me about things, and sometimes they'll go to you about things, even though technically I'm the direct supervisor or whatever. But like I don't take that personally because sometimes I'm busy or I'm not around or sometimes it's something I know I would have to ask you anyway.
well,
So
I don't know how you view this, but for me, I'm so glad you feel that way.
mhm,
But for me, I view it as they actually see us
mhm,
as one.
right.
They don't see it as Christopher's hit this level and Kim is at this level and I can't go to Kim until I go through like we just don't have that dynamic.
Mhm.
We're one and the same.
That's a good way to think about it. Yeah. Here from sunny Utah.
And Harper's Ferry, West Virginia,
That's right.
where it's freezing.
Yep. So we started our episode talking about 2020 a little bit. So what are some things that you're excited about for 2021?
Well, again, we're starting traveling. We're traveling next week,
Yep.
right? Next week I'm going to be in Tennessee. Next week you're supposed to be in Iowa.
Yep.
And we have another group that's going to be in Florida. So while there's been great moments about like having all this time at home, like you were saying with
Mhm.
music and things that you were doing, I've felt that same way. Um, but I'm anxious to travel again.
Mhm.
I mentioned to someone earlier, you know, the people that we're about to go see next week, because we have, I hate to even call them customers, but people that we're like partnering with and doing stuff with. There's a lot of people I can't wait to see over the next
Mhm.
couple months that
Yep.
we haven't seen in a long time, that I almost like view them as friends. Like it'll be great to see them and catch up. And so I'm looking forward
Mhm.
to that. Um, so I just think that for us and our team, we have so much ahead of us. So
Mhm.
like when you ask that question, I think there's so many things that I actually look forward to. I mean, I think we're at a place right now where there's 10 of us and we have a great, energetic, bright team.
Mhm.
It's almost like it's this perfect mix of older people,
Mhm.
right? Or more experienced, with wise, maybe. I don't know. We try to be wise, so I think like Kelly, Ray, myself, I will group you with the older people, even though you're not
Yeah.
as old as us. I mean,
Yeah.
got the gray and a beard, but you're not as old. But then we also have we got this young group of people
Mhm.
that I feel like when you get them together, they just blow me away. I was in the office with four of them yesterday, and it's like I want to unleash them on everything, right? Because
Right.
it's like there's nothing they can't do. There's nothing that either you or I could ask them to do that they can't figure out,
Mhm.
and they want to do it fast.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's honestly travel, and I just can't wait to see what this team does this year.
Yeah, because I mean, really, we had two new additions to the team last year, and we haven't really been able to fully utilize them. So of course, they're going to get plenty of opportunity to start next week.
Oh yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. And again, we have our first trainer who lives away from us.
mhm.
So that's going to be wonderful. Like, I can't wait to spend more time with her. And yeah, it's going to be great.
So hopefully this will be the year that the rest of the team feels comfortable traveling alone.
I don't know about that.
Right.
I think you're pushing it there.
Yeah. Yeah. Looking at our calendar and everything, I definitely I definitely agree with looking forward to seeing folks, especially folks who we saw them in their first time, going through things with them and then seeing what their progress is. And it's always cool. I'm sure other people that travel frequently and working with folks feel the same way, but you can look and be like, oh, I'm going to this place. I remember that's where these people were, and this was what it was like before. And it is almost like it's almost like mini family reunions that you just
Yeah,
have all the time.
it really is. And I find if I go somewhere and they're not there anymore, I feel so disappointed. Then I want to find
Hmm.
out where they are and if
Hmm.
they're okay, or,
Yep.
yeah, it's a good thing. The other thing I think I'm looking forward to it. Like, I hope it's what I have in my head. But before COVID, when we would travel, I would say that I was always shocked at how kind people were.
Hmm.
That so often people talk about people being mean, but honestly, 95% of the time, traveling in airports, staying in hotels, I just saw like the best of people. Like, people would be so kind.
Hmm.
And so it's going to be interesting to see, as we're now where we are with COVID. I wish I could say it was over. I don't think it's over. How are people going to be? Is it going to be even better because people have had that feeling of we have to come together? I was listening to something on the radio this morning that was talking about that sort of after crisis surge of togetherness that happens. And they were talking about after 9/11. That even like the first couple days after 9/11 happened, even if you just walked into a store, it was like you could feel this sense of, I don't know what else to say, like patriotism, or like, we're Americans, we're together,
Hmm.
we can get through anything, help each other. And they were saying that they hope as we get closer to the end of this, that's what that sort of after surge of a crisis
Hmm.
will happen. That, like, this country who has been, we're not going to even get into why we have been so divided through COVID,
Hmm.
but is there going to be like this big surge of people just like, let's just put our differences aside and be good to each other?
Yeah.
Because it's been rough. I mean, that whole feeling like, come on, let's take care of each other. It's been rough.
Well, when you think about it, in our country, after 9/11 took place, that was an event that had an impact nationwide, right?
Mhm.
In some capacity. And when you think about COVID, same thing.
Worldwide.
Yeah.
Like, would you feel the same thing if you went to another country?
Hmm.
Would you feel like it's not about, I'm this and you're American, or it's just like we're humans?
Hmm. It is kind of sad though that it takes a wide-reaching tragedy to unify people, right?
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is? Like, why does it take something bad to bring people together?
I don't know. Does it just make us grateful?
I think it's TikTok. Pretty sure
you're
it's
gonna have to you're gonna have to explain that.
sorry, I'm pretty sure it's TikTok. And if you're a representative from TikTok, I'm kidding. Not, but I'm kidding.
Call us if you're a representative from TikTok and you're watching this. Call us, because maybe we'll be willing to start doing some videos.
Right. Right. Oh, we got a couple of staff that are into that at least.
Absolutely.
All right. So one thing we had discussed talking about, this goes into what we're looking forward to in 2021. I'll kick this off for myself. I have successfully been able to drop weight and maintain a lower weight easier, not traveling and not having to eat out for every meal. So now, now there's Cheesecake Factory on the horizon. Mm.
Ice cream shops. Wow.
So, what are some of your favorite places strictly for the food that you hope to get to this year? Where like that's literally one of the things when they say, "Oh, this trip's coming up," you're like, "Oh, that's a place where I like to get this or go to this restaurant."
Well, for me, number one is send me to a conference in New Orleans.
Hmm.
Number one, New Orleans.
Really?
Yeah, so many restaurants in New Orleans that I love. But I mean, I had some amazing food in Sheridan, Wyoming. That was some really good food.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I'd have to think. Do you have others besides Cheesecake Factory? Like
Oh
what
yeah.
trip? Like what trips would be for you?
Well, one is in 2 weeks in Virgin, Utah. They're right outside of
Oh
Zion
yeah,
Park,
me too.
Bitten Spur.
Me too.
Awesome place. Awesome place. They also have a really good coffee shop slash cafe. I can't remember the name right off.
Oh, Rolling Rock. Oh, no.
No, that's
Uh,
alcohol.
but it's
Red Rock?
some Red Rock. Red Rock Coffee Roasters.
Yeah, that place is always
Is
good.
that it? Or River Rock?
I don't know. All I know is you and Ray get
Something
these
like that.
cinnamon buns that are like this big around and like that
Oh my
thick.
gosh, it's so good.
Hmm.
It's so good. Yeah, Bit and Spur. That's definitely good. There's
Uh,
just so many, and so I think we need to start keeping better track.
yeah, our learning engineer who's based out of Mejia, Texas, has her own YouTube video blog of food reviewing that she has started. So we gotta up our game.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we're like
Absolutely.
we're like the grandparents trying to figure out how to operate a cricket phone.
I know. She's a TikTok. She's a TikToker too. Do
Yeah,
you say that? Do you say that TikToker?
TikToker,
I don't know.
TikTokist,
Yeah, I don't
TikToky,
know.
something like that. Um, even though I'm not getting to go to New Mexico this month, that's another great place for food. Uh, San Francisco,
Oh,
great,
San
great
Francisco.
seafood place. The Crab House, I like. Uh,
Yeah.
also went to one. I can't remember if it's called Fresh or Fish Market with Eugene, who wrote that story on us a while
Hmm.
back.
Hmm.
Ate there with him and his wife. Probably the last time I went, that was really good. So yeah, I mean, when we enjoy what we do and the purpose of what we do, but there is a stress to not being home and being with
Well,
family and
absolutely.
all. So one of the things we look forward to is eating.
It is.
Uh, and before last year hit, it was also going to the movies.
That's true.
So will that come back this year, you think? Do you
I
think
think
we'll
some
be
are
able to?
open. I think some of the movies are open. But maybe
Yeah,
maybe limited seating or something.
I know the Alamo Draft House, which is close to us here. I'm on their mailing list, and they announce how you have to wear a mask the whole time in the theater, but you know how people are around here. You know, they got to put it under their nose. But they also said that they have some specialized filtering in their HVAC system.
Oh, cool.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I've missed the movies. I've missed doing that.
Yeah. So hopefully that'll come back this year. It's a shame that things haven't cleared up better COVID wise because next week we'll be right by an axe throwing
Oh, that's
facility.
right.
So
That's right. You will be.
yeah. Oh
It
well.
will be.
And I feel like if I went in wearing latex gloves, I would just look like a serial killer.
Yeah, don't do that.
Probably not a good
Don't do
look.
that.
Yeah,
Nah,
can't
probably
can't
not.
can't wear the Ukeru shirt for that one.
No.
All right. Well, this has been the Mindset second episode to come out for 2021. What are we talking about next time?
Mm. I don't know unless you know. Otherwise, we'll make it a surprise.
Yeah, we'll just call it a surprise.
It'll be a surprise.
Yeah, it'll be a surprise.
And maybe we'll do it from the road.
This is true. This would be something new.
We'll have to see what trip we're on together. We could just do it from the road.
Then we don't have to do these special backgrounds.
Right. Could be real.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. See you later.